Hi everybody, welcome to week 3. It's Dr. Hardell. Thank you so much for getting your week 2 papers in. I'm going to start looking at them this evening and hopefully I'll get them done, I'm hoping by Sunday night. I'll do my best. And I usually try to start with the first papers that were submitted are the first ones that get scored and looked at. All right, this week in our discussion questions, we're really focusing on some basic research information, levels of evidence, and critical appraisal factors. These were mentioned in some of your week 2 posts, but it'll be good to just dig into those a little bit further this week. One of our objectives this week is to formulate research support, and that will come into play as you write your Section C literature report part of your overall EBP proposal. So let's go ahead and look at that assignment. Now first, there are actually 3 parts to this assignment. A paper, appraisal checklists, and a table. Okay, now you'll be turning in the paper this week. You're going to turn in the appraisal checklist and the table as part of your final proposal packet, okay? But I'm going to strongly encourage you to complete the checklist and the table before you write your paper. Because when you're able to answer all the questions in the checklist and fill out all the columns of your table, writing your paper for this week will be so much easier. And you will include all of the most critical elements about your articles. So let's take a closer look at some of these parts, okay? So the rapid critical appraisal checklists are in your text. They're in Appendix B, and that starts on page 708, okay? And there are different types of checklists for different types of studies and reviews. So try your best to use the checklist that is specific to your study. If one of them really doesn't seem to match, there is also a general one at the beginning of that section of the appendix that can kind of be used for something that doesn't match the specific checklist. Okay. Remember, you are recommending a change in practice. It's your recommendation, and so it's really critical that there is enough quality evidence there to really support that recommendation, right? Okay, so remember that these checklists will not get turned in this week. They will be with the final proposal package that you're going to be uploading at the end of the course. But the findings will be incorporated into your paper for this week. Okay? All right, on to the table. So you're going to create a table that is, there's an evidence table that is found again in the appendix, and it's just shortly after the appraisal checklist, so it's in the 700s. It's just a little bit further into your text. And so you're going to create a table with the same headings as the table in your textbook. And you can do it in Word or Excel, whatever you're most comfortable with. I don't care. The columns should just go across one page, and so your font will be really quite small. So the columns will end up being really long and very narrow once you fill them in, okay? So as far as the headings, please include all of the headings on that evidence table in your book, but each article may not have content for each column. Okay, an example would be some studies don't include a conceptual framework, and you'll only have both an independent and a dependent factor if your article was an experiment, right? Because descriptive studies and other things don't have dependent variables, only experiments. Okay? So, but if you are looking at true studies, which is what you need for EBP and not just information articles, you really should be able to fill in the information in most of those columns on the table, okay? And the table will then give you, because basically the table is listing every article that you're going to include. And so once you get that table completed, you should have a really good idea if you have enough evidence to back up recommending a practice change, okay? Now, there's no hard and fast rule that says you have to have this many studies before you can submit a proposal. But a good rule of thumb is to have 3 or 4 solid studies. Remember, we can never base a practice change on just one study. That would be research utilization, which is a lower level than evidence-based practice. So a good rule of thumb is 3 to 4 solid studies. Okay, now let's actually get to the paper that you're going to turn in this week. So you have 750 to 1,000 words for the body of your paper. And as you will see on the feedback that I give you from your week 2 papers, I do determine the word count just from the body of your paper. And as I said in last week's video, word count is important because you need to learn how to be clear and concise. That's what academic writing is when you're applying for a grant, when you're writing a policy or a procedure. It's important to be clear and concise. Include only the most important information. So remember that this section that you're doing is part of a larger project, so you don't need an introductory and conclusion paragraph. So that will save you some words. So you'll need to start out by telling me how you found your articles. Where did you search? What databases? What keywords did you use? What criteria did you use to keep or reject an article that came up, like date, patient population, things like that? What criteria did you use? And then how many articles did you end up reviewing, finding with those search criterias before you narrowed it down to the ones that actually are going to make it into your table, okay? So then the next part of the directions say that you're going to summarize what you found, including your evaluation of strengths and limitations of the studies, right? Because when we're presenting evidence, we can't just say, oh, it's all wonderful, it's great, we're going to go for this. People need to know what was good, but also were there limitations. And in almost every research article out there, there will actually be a section of the article that talks about limitations. Okay, so you're going to be including some of those. But remember, you don't have unlimited words, right? So if you did your checklist and your table, it will be much easier to summarize that information because the most important things will really just pop out. But if you find yourself exceeding the word count, okay, ask yourself, what is the least I can say about this study and get the critical information across? I'm not looking for flowery language. Remember, this isn't creative writing, academic writing, right? Are there any similar studies that maybe I can talk about together? Okay. Are there any studies that I should really be throwing out because they really didn't have the information I needed? And it's just going to take up words saying that this study wasn't what I needed. Okay. Finally, the assignment has a little twist at the end. You will need to briefly discuss the validity of internal and external research. That's also called internal and external evidence, and I think your text really refers to it more as especially internal evidence. Okay, so these can be quite different, the validity of the two. So sometimes when you do an evidence-based project in a facility, instead of for a course, but if you're doing it live, sometimes you will have most of your evidence come from external sources, but you may also include some internal information to boost up maybe why you need to practice and things like that. All right, you only need to give me a few little sentences about that. So it shouldn't take up a lot of your word count, all right? All right. you'll also have a reference list, right? And so I can't remember. I know that more than a few of you struggle with how to format your references, and I can't remember if I've already given you the APA or GCU's APA style guide, where it kind of condenses some information from the APA book. Sometimes you just have to pull out the APA book because it's just a detail that you can't quite get. But the GCU APA style guide is really quite effective, and you guys are lucky. You still get to use the 6th edition. I think within another month, the 7th edition is going to be coming out. But luckily, you can use the 6th that you already have used before. So, but I will definitely attach that style guide to this post just to make sure that you have it. You should already have it, but you never know where some things get filed away. Okay, so that's basically an overview of this week. I hope it was helpful. Please keep in mind you do have the GCU librarians at your disposal. I talked about that in a previous video. And as usual, let me know if you have any questions that I can help you with. All right, guys, I'll see you in the main forum.